what is it about money that you want? Because most people, if you're holding a bunch of dollar bills, like that's not actually gonna make you happy, right? It's like what you wanna do with that money. What I would encourage anyone listening to do is, and this could apply to any desire that you have, whether it's money or something else, is to really go the step deeper and ask yourself why. Like, what would I really get if I had that?
Stasia, welcome back to the podcast.
Ryan, so good to be back.
So good to have you. And I love how your work specifically and your soul and your essence is going to add to this conversation we're having about being happier on this amazing summer series. I was so happy to see your name come through as one of the people who wanted to join. So yay, and thank you for being here.
Oh my gosh, it's perfect. I love this topic.
Well, the first thing that came to mind to ask you was, if someone comes to you for a theta healing and they're like, I just really want to feel happier in my life, what would be the first question or series of questions that you would ask that person?
I love this, getting to the process. So I think first of all, it's actually understanding for them like what happiness actually looks like, right? So, which area of their life is it, in their marriage? Is it at, their job, in their career, in their purpose, and what happiness would actually look like for them. And then essentially what I do is I tune into to their subconscious mind, or like the source truth of, their beliefs and programs in their subconscious mind to understand what is the block between where they are now to getting to where, they want to be. And honestly, with this question specifically, I think for a lot of people, it's almost like the inability to recognize and to know what true joy and happiness actually are, right? And so one theme that I see often with high achievers in the work that I do is working with soul-led high achievers. They're constantly chasing the next thing because they're high achievers, and so they want to attain more and reach the next level and the next level after that. And unless they actually familiarize themselves and feel safe in just being, right? And in feeling joy and staying present and basking in that happiness, then they're gonna, even when they achieve their goal or attain what they were looking to get, they're gonna keep looking for the next thing and the next thing after that. And so what I do is in the process is essentially clear the beliefs that have them believing that what they have isn't enough. And the specific beliefs that come for, that are relevant to them of what is preventing them from really feeling happy.
Yeah. So I'm hearing you say that many people are essentially blocked from feeling the happiness or joy that's always accessible. It's always there, but people are blocked from it. What is a universal thread for the people, the soul-led high achievers that you're working with, that are kind of universal for all of them, that's really just blocking their happiness? Is it fear? Is it money? Is it, fear of success? Like, is there one thing that's kind of relevant to everybody?
I think, it's tough to say, but I would say a common thread that applies to many people is the concept of enoughness, right? And so it's not just about being enough, but about, having enough or doing enough. And like I said, with the people that I mostly work with are high achievers, right? And so we always want more. And in doing that, sometimes it's hard to really feel and recognize like that we are enough as is. And so the goal is really to feel enough, but still create on top of that. So then we're creating from a place of spaciousness rather than lack. And I actually have a great example that is very relevant to this with a woman that I worked with. And she was an entrepreneur. She was really successful in her business already, right? So she was already making a lot of money. She, had a lot of things that, she'd already achieved and attained. And she came to me and her specific thing was that she felt very overwhelmed. She's just like, I just can't like I just don't have room to breathe, right? I have little kids at home. I have this, like my house is chaotic. And, I have so many ideas for my business that I want to, grow it even further. But it's like, I just, I feel like I'm always rushed or not enough time or, what that is. And so when I tuned into her subconscious and when I really got to the bottom belief and the block of what it was causing this pattern in her life, there was a belief that said that enoughness was boring, right? And so for her, she believed that enoughness was boring and that if she ever achieved the level of enoughness, if she ever had spaciousness, in her business, in her life, and in her work, then it would be boring. And it's as if it was like the beginning of the end where there'd be no more to achieve. And so her subconscious really feared that. And so protected her, and I say that in quotes, from reaching the level of enough. And so once we did clear that, I remember her telling me how she just felt so much more spacious in her business. Like she was like, I was finally able to act upon ideas that I had. And even though I still had a lot of ideas, it felt like I was like actually moving towards, like I was creating from joy and moving upwards and getting things done as opposed to just being overwhelmed by all the ideas.
That's so powerful. One of the words that's come up pretty consistently so far in this series is contentment.
Mm.
And I think of contentment kind of as a synonym for boring, like when you think about it at first glance. But we've talked about it in the context between like if someone's feeling really overwhelmed, really frazzled in their life, really depressed or anxious about the future, what would be like two steps up from that emotion or even one step up? Possibly just contentment, which to me is like looking in the present moment, noticing what's already here, and then being able to feel that and make that feel safe in your body. So, like this safety in our body piece is the thing that I want to ask you about, is what's stopping so many of us from feeling the contentment or the enoughness or the joy, like that it doesn't feel safe for some reason?
Yeah, that could be it. I mean, safety in our body, right? Like it really is teaching our body, our subconscious mind, our nervous system that it is safe to just be, right? And so many of us have so many programs that, are focused around achievement and like attaining things and, pushing through and doing more. Whereas contentment and kind of going back to what you were originally saying in a way is less, is the concept of less is more, right? So it's not about doing more, it's about being present and being content in what you do have, right? So I really think that the common theme here is presence, right? Like when we are truly able to just be present in our lives, that's when we can really allow happiness in as well, because happiness is a state of mind, right? It's not living in the future or living in the past. It's just, shedding like the layers that don't serve us. It's, not worrying about the fears and, insecurities or whatever is coming up that isn't actually true in the present. It's just focusing on the now and where you are. And as it relates to safety in the body, as a result, teaching yourself that like, I am safe in the now. When I am present, I am safe in the now. As long as I can breathe, like I am safe. And so it all does relate to that, right? And so, whether it's our subconscious mind convincing us that we need to achieve more in order to be happy, or, or we need to do more in order to, you know, be happy, we're really robbing ourselves from the presence, which is true happiness. And it also is safety in the now, safety in your body.
Yeah. So you said the question you would ask somebody if they came to you wanting to be happier is, what does happiness actually look like for you? So I'm curious, in your life, Stasia, what does happiness look and feel like to you? What's your definition essentially?
Yeah, I love this question. And I think it's definitely changed over the years because I think, in the past, I definitely was someone who was like, okay, well, I just need to, if only I had a partner, if only I made more money, if only I had this, if only I had that, I'd be happy. But now, I mean, it really is about presence, right? And I feel like I learned that and I'm reminded of that every day, especially through my kids. I have 2 young kids and, all they want is really presence, right? They're not amazed or, by fancy things or money or anything like that. And so it really is the practice of being present with them. And I think that's what, creates happiness.
So, in your first appearance on the podcast, which was episode 122, Shattering Your Glass Ceiling and Letting Go of Limiting Beliefs, I think was the title, you shared a bit about your backstory. You got laid off from your corporate career. You kind of got a gentle nudge from the universe to really kind of go after your dreams and go after what your soul was already asking for. Was there a point in that process where you were like, oh my God, I'm so worried, or I'm so anxious, or I'm really unhappy? Like, what the heck? Or did you know enough to kind of use the tools you were already learning about in your personal development journey up until that point?
So definitely a little bit of both. There was, to your second point, I definitely knew enough in terms of I deeply knew that this was my sign. I deeply knew that it was like, I didn't think I was ready to leave corporate, but God thought I was ready. And I truly had full faith in doing that. So that was my unwavering belief. But to speak to the fears, I absolutely had so many fears. And, you know, I had already accomplished a lot that I was proud of in my life, where I was in corporate and, in my family and in a lot of areas of my life, I was happy. But stepping into entrepreneurship was, being at the bottom of something completely new, right? And so it was, regardless of all of the work that I've already done on myself, stepping into entrepreneurship is a different ballgame, right? Like I am starting from scratch in this area. And so I had to continue, and I still do, clear so many programs and patterns that were in my subconscious mind of what does it mean to be an entrepreneur? What does this look like? And of course, there's so many fears, that come up and that I, still have to work through in this journey. But again, I still do have, and I always did from the beginning, is have this unwavering belief and unwavering faith that my life to date brought me to where I am. And so it all happened exactly as it should. And just the trust that I know that I'm following my soul led work. And so I know I'm meant to be here.
Thank you for your honesty with that. I think a lot of people here with us today can really relate to big transitions in their lives or stressful seasons and think like, why am I suffering so much? And just knowing like we're all suffering in some form or fashion on a daily, weekly, or monthly basis, but it's the intentional choosing, it's the habits, it's the people we surround ourselves with, it's the way that we think about happiness and our beliefs that actually are kind of like the flotation device, even when we're in these challenging seasons. So, for someone right now who is in a challenge and is like, I just want to be a little bit happier, I hope that we are prompting them to really think about what happiness means to them. What do you think we're getting really wrong about happiness as a culture, or what your clients are getting wrong, what you've gotten wrong in the past?
Think as a culture, and I love this question, but I think it kind of relates to, what I used to think about happiness, which is that happiness is something outside of us, right? Like happiness is something that we need to achieve. But again, the way the subconscious mind works is that unless that we teach ourselves to be safe in the present, to be safe in the now, to be able to bask in the happiness once we do achieve it, then your subconscious will always look for proof otherwise, right? And so if you believe that happiness is something that's outside of you that you need to attain, then even when you get it, you're still going to be looking for more or searching for the next thing, right? Or you might actually like subconsciously sabotage it because it doesn't feel safe in having it.
Your process of your work is phenomenal. I've seen it firsthand. I felt it. I've seen it. It is Absolutely amazing. So I just want to touch on like this process that you use with your clients, and I'm assuming in your real life. Actually, I know in your real life because you talked about it on the first episode that we had. And it's basically, and I want you to expand on this, but it's basically step 1 is awareness of the blockage. Step 2 is pattern recognition. So like noticing like, oh, here this thing is again, here this thing in my life is showing up again, like what's going on with that, and then understanding the belief that caused that to happen in your life, and then clearing those beliefs through choice and or free will. And those are my words and not yours, so could you kind of expand on what that process looks like in real time so that somebody A can work with you, or B, like just start to notice in their lives on their own, like how these patterns keep coming up and up and up, and maybe why they're still feeling a little bit like a victim of their lives.
Love that. And I think you framed it so well. I think, often when I try to explain it, it goes, deeper into kind of the concept of how it works. And essentially, it's energy healing, right? And so, unless you're doing it, it's hard to really explain the how. But, I am a trained intuitive. And so, I intuitively see and channel like what is at the root cause of the subconscious that is causing this pattern in the first place, and essentially like witness the energetic shift in speaking the beliefs out loud to you. And so you as my client, all it takes is your like conscious awareness and free will, as you said, to really agree to clear it. But I think the way you explained it is actually so perfect because from someone, from the perspective of someone listening to this, I think, even without working with me, I think a big thing that someone can do in their own lives is self-awareness. Like truly the practice of self-awareness goes so far. And as you mentioned, the recognition of patterns, right? And so like to be aware of, what are you resisting? Like what do you really want? And, where are you resisting having it, or what are you resisting in like moving forward, and recognizing also the patterns that show up in your life, right? And so say if you have a strained relationship with your partner, and then that's also manifesting your relationship with your boss, and then you know what I mean, it's like to catch those patterns, or just different areas in your life where you're playing small, where that you're meant for more, but you're just shying away from that. And so it's that self-awareness of the pattern recognition, and then really starting to ask yourself why, right? Like why am I resisting this? What is causing this? And, aside from working with me where I kind of channel to, the root cause and where that stemmed from, often what it takes is really just genuinely listening for the answer, right? Not letting your mind race and try to answer it logically, but like, whether that looks like, a moment of meditation for you, but just genuinely asking and be willing to see what comes through. And I think that is really the first step of being able to clear it, is that conscious awareness, right? And that conscious choice as well.
Love that because, like you explained to me before, I forget what percentage it is. It's a ridiculous percentage. Is it like 90%? 90% of our lives are being run by our subconscious. Is that right?
So it's 95% of our lives. So that is,
95.
that is the stat that you can kind of look up, and it's a commonly used stat that it's our subconscious mind that runs 95% of our lives on autopilot, which really means that it's only like 5% of our, choices and like the micro decisions, right? In our day to day that we consciously choose, right? And so, if I'm picking up a glass of water, like I'm not consciously thinking like I am thirsty, I am going to do this. I'm kind of just like doing it on autopilot. And the same thing goes with how we attract our reality, essentially, right? Because our subconscious patterns, if we have beliefs or programs that are limiting, that tell us that, we're not worthy, we're not good enough, or we can't do this, or, something like that, then that is our energy essentially putting that out into the universe. And it's what attracts, our surroundings to kind of act accordingly.
So I don't know why. And if this feels like way off for you, Stasia, you tell me and we can just cut this right out. But I feel like we need to talk about money because of the way that the news, portrays the economy, and because of the way our culture is shifting, because of the way work is shifting, because there are so many people here who want to be entrepreneurs or, are entrepreneurs just starting out, and money is a thing, and it's a thing for me. And so I'm curious, when somebody is doing a session with you, or just like the wisdom that you've learned from your own life, what part does money play with happiness, and how are the two related or not?
Yeah. I mean, I think that money does definitely relate to happiness, right? It relates in that, it can buy us things to live more fruitful lives, right? And so it's undeniable. I'm not going to sit here and say that, it has nothing to do with happiness. But I think that money is such a, we put so much pressure on it in society, and there's so much, expectations that we tie so much of our worth and our own value based on money and our ability to make money. And so by doing that, we're putting so much emphasis on it. And as a result, we're putting a lot of emphasis on our happiness and relating it to, money and how much money we can make. But as it relates to my work is it kind of just goes back to the root, right? And so, whether we're working on money or whether we're working on happiness, it really goes back to like, what is at the root of that? And what beliefs are you carrying or programs that you're operating from that don't actually serve you, that lead to your lack of money or your lack of happiness?
Yeah, it's so interesting. There's a stat, and I don't remember it correctly, but basically, once your basic survival needs are met, so you have enough money to pay your mortgage, pay your rent, have food, like the basics. I want to say like it's a fairly small, I don't want to say small, but it's like a fairly reasonable or modest number, something like 80 grand maybe in our society today. And once you go above that 80 grand as household income, it actually does not affect happiness or satisfaction at all. So you need that
Mhm.
baseline, like you need your survival needs met. And if you're not having those met, of course, you are so overwhelmed, you're so stressed, you're in survival mode all the time. Like, yes. And once you have those needs met, so once you hit a certain income level, anything above that does not increase satisfaction of life. And I think that's so fascinating because you work with high achievers, and like I can relate to that label. And we're coming back to this enoughness piece of, why are we not feeling enough? Why do we have to add another zero or three more zeros or five more zeros to our bank account to feel like we are valid or worthy of this experience in the world? So I don't know if you have any thoughts on that.
I think it goes to the piece of, what is actually at the root of, causing us to not feel enough. And one thing that I encourage my clients to do and just to, inwardly think about is the point of money, right? So like we think about money and we think we want money. But I'm going to challenge you to go a state deeper and really ask yourself why, right? So like what is it about money that you want? Because most people like, if you're holding a bunch of, dollar bills, like that's not actually going to make you happy, right? It's like what you want to do with that money. Do you want to travel? Or maybe it's just a sense of security where you know that you can provide for your family, you know that you can, meet your basic needs. Or, maybe it's just like financial freedom, and what that looks like. But really what I would encourage anyone listening to do is any desire, and this could apply to any desire that you have, whether it's money or something else, is to really go the step deeper and ask yourself why. Like, what would I really get if I had that? And some people haven't even thought about that outside of money. They just think I need money because that's what, makes things go around. But there are so many different intentions around money, right? And people want it for different reasons. And I think that once you have that, right? Like once you have that, reason, so maybe it's a sense of security, then that's when you start asking yourself, like, where how can I feel in and tap into that sense of security more? Or like financial freedom, like how can I feel more financially free in the now, and recognizing like what you do have, like what you can treat yourself to, and just kind of like helping to build and formulate those habits, because what that does is it trains your subconscious mind to recognize that what you have is enough, but also to recognize that, you can feel financially free or you can feel secure. So in security, it's like, well, I have a roof over my head. I'm able to meet my, basic needs. And just kind of like training your subconscious mind to pick up on that, because once you do, it's going to bring you more of that, right? And so when you recognize and you feel, yeah, I do have security, actually, I do have a roof over my head, then you're able to attract more of that, essentially, where, life brings you more things to feel secure about.
For me, what's coming up, the word that's synonymous with money is freedom. And as you were talking, I was tapping into what freedom feels like. And it's like the freedom to wake up and choose what to do with my day, the
Hmm.
freedom to pick my kids up at 1 o'clock from school because they want to come home early and we feel like having a half day, the freedom to block off my calendar because I need to rest, the freedom that comes with knowing that we can have access to the practitioners that we need and the organic farm to table food that we want and the supplements that, need to be in the medicine cabinet, et cetera, et cetera. And when I tuned into that freedom, because listen, I'm not perfect in this realm at all. And that's the reason that I asked this question really is that I'm working through some things of what money means to me and that why behind it, like you so brilliantly said. And so I'm going, okay, if it feels like freedom, when is a time that it didn't feel like freedom? Like essentially I'm
Hmm.
trying to get into what's that pattern for me? Where did that first show up? What subconscious belief might I still be holding on to? Is that a way like in real time to really like explore these deeper questions that are coming up for all of us during this conversation?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the, slightly like a shift on what you said is not necessarily thinking of a time when you didn't have this freedom, right? Because that part is kind of about acknowledging that you do have this now, right? You did create this for yourself and really recognizing that. But one question to ask along the same, lines of thought as you mentioned is almost like, when was a time that I felt that I didn't have that freedom, right? And so sometimes it could bring you, sometimes that's not, and there's a slight nuance there, right? But it's a difference because it's not always reality, right? And so maybe it was, you in as a child where your parents made decisions for you and they're like, no, Ryan, like you need to do this, you need to do that. And you didn't feel that sense of freedom, right? So it's not necessarily that you didn't have money and so therefore you couldn't have that freedom, but it was, maybe there was a belief that said, like, I can't make choices for myself, therefore, I don't have the freedom to choose, right? So it could be like small nuances like that. And so that's why kind of, I to what you said, I would just go like a little bit even deeper of asking, when did you feel that way? And really sit there and allow yourself to think back to the earliest memory, right? Whether it's in your childhood or like when that comes through. And then just keep asking yourself questions like, who else was around? How did I feel? What was happening? And because you can get a lot from just sitting and really listening to those answers, and you start to see how some of these patterns were formed, how some of these beliefs were shaped. And once you do, it really does become so much easier to just choose otherwise, to recognize that that no longer applies to you. That's no longer your reality.
You know what's so interesting as I started to peel back the layers in my head, it wasn't actually about money. It was just about freedom. You know what I mean? The
Mhm.
money piece just stripped away. And I thought, oh, well, my mom was very controlling growing up. She still is. I love you, mom. There were certain expectations in the family that I, as like a free spirited, sensitive, and rebellious kid, did not want to comply with. And so it's interesting that that's what came up for me, which has nothing to do with money. And so I'm actually going to take this and like journal this out and kind of like peel this back even more because this is the proof of your work. This is the proof of what lives in our subconscious is not necessarily what we even think, it is. And like think in quotes.
Money itself isn't a feeling. It's like a desire, but it's not a feeling. And so I would just, to anyone listening, I would just recommend for you to like really peel back to, the feeling of what it is that you want.
Love that so much. Again, you are such a gift. Go to Stasia's Instagram at Create Higher. She's got some amazing resources over there. I know you have fun new offerings coming out, and you share lots and lots of great information there. Thank you so much for being you and for being here today, Stasia.
Right. It was such a pleasure. Thank you so much for having me on.